Well, welcome everybody. As you can see, today is a smaller group. Most of our audience will be online. And that is also because some of the group that usually is here is at the CEO luncheon. But I can promise you this will be a good talk too. This will be a good lunch too. So you all made a good choice. So today we have actually three speakers combined, right? So we have our main speaker, Carlos Coranado. He's here from Tech Systems. He's an account manager. Is an alum from the University of Arizona. He's the first one in his family to get a college degree, right? Which is, congratulations, which is awesome. He's a double major in criminal justice and public management and policy. So, very interesting. He will be, I'm not going to say assisted, but supported and reinforced by Madison Shepley. She's an account manager. And Hannah Silagin, she's a recruiter at also at the same company, Tech Systems. And so as usual, we will have them talk. We will have a little quiz at the end where we will collect the quizzes. And if you can't make it, for those online, you can do the quiz online and then you can still get your certificate. It's all yours. Thank you.
So good morning, good afternoon. One thing we're going to talk about today is how to leverage LinkedIn and Meetups for your next career. So one big thing at Tech Systems is we noticed that your resume it matters, but LinkedIn is like a big factor in your next opportunity. So a couple things we're going to go over. I'm going to do a little introduction about myself and who I support. I know she gave me a little bit of a spiel. But outside of that, we're going to talk about Tech Systems at a glance, career path at Tech Systems. What is LinkedIn? Does everyone have a LinkedIn here out of curiosity? I'm guessing so, right? And we're just going to do a deeper dive. If you guys have any questions, I want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have a question, you guys are more than welcome to ask me. Why should you use LinkedIn? Essential parts of a professional LinkedIn, building your network, building your brand, how you want to be noticed in the job market, using LinkedIn as your next career opportunity, and the last thing is meetups, locally and internationally, wherever you prefer. So before we hop right in, just kind of dig off of what she said about me. So I'm an account manager with Tech Systems. I support SLED, which is state, local, and higher education. So an account that I work with here in Tucson is the University of Arizona. So that's my biggest account that I support. She supports a little bit of everything else too here in town. A couple mining companies, a couple financial companies, so to kind of give that dynamic. And Hannah is a recruiter here, so she recruits on everything that we bring in from a technology standpoint, and she mainly focuses in applications. So that she can briefly give a little description of what she supports.
So I support a lot in terms of applications. Like Carlos said, not limited to a specific account. Right now my focus is on Java and Java developers, but I am lucky enough to be able to support kind of everything that Tech Systems encompasses beyond applications as well.
So I'm just going to give you a quick little snippet of who we are and what Tech Systems is. Has anyone heard about Tech Systems or at least seen them out there? Getting a couple nods. Yes. Yes. All right. Perfect. Click through that. So just to kind of give a scope of what Tech Systems is, we have over 6,000 clients. A couple of the big ones nationally is like Apple, Amazon, PayPal, American Express out in Phoenix. So just to kind of give you a grasp of like the companies that we actually support, $3.7 billion in annual revenue, 5,000 full-time employees, which consists of contractors and full-time employees. It depends on on personal preference. And I just want to quickly touch on a couple things here. One huge key factor that I didn't include, which I apologize, is just showing that unemployment is less than 3%. So to kind of paint that picture is like, hey, the job market's going to be demanding and very hard to get into. So how are you going to stand out to the rest of the people that are applying for the same jobs or different jobs that are out there in the market? So internally versus externally, we have a high-performance team measured not only by numbers, but also values and passion that drive our people to succeed. We hugely promote from within. So I started as an intern, I became a recruiter, and then I moved into account management within a year and a half. So a lot of growth internally and externally. Every year we deploy over 80,000 IT professionals at the 6,000 clients across America, Europe, and Asia. So to kind of paint that for you, we have 130 offices nationwide. So if you're looking for something here in town or nationally, we can always help out and we can always point you in the right direction as we begin to transition into helping you build out your LinkedIn if you have those questions afterwards. So a couple last thing here. In 2015, Fortune magazine, we're listed as 100 best companies. 100 best companies to work for. So just a quick little snippet about us. And we'll just dive into LinkedIn. So I know you guys all said yes. Well, majority of you guys said yes to LinkedIn. If I must ask, what's the biggest thing or biggest takeaway that you guys have gotten recently from LinkedIn, if I can ask that question? As you guys are progressing forward, I know probably a lot of you are master's students or looking to get into careers here in the near future. What has been your biggest takeaway about LinkedIn, if someone wants to answer that?
And how much are you utilizing it? Are you utilizing it at all, or you just create one to create one?
Anybody?
I'm not in business, but I created one to create one, and if I get an email, I'll check it out, but I don't check it with it
Okay.
on any regular basis.
So the way to think about LinkedIn too is just like social media. Everyone has an Instagram, everyone has probably a Twitter or Facebook. I would highly recommend being really active on your LinkedIn because it's going to be your resume here in the near future. But just some quick little stats about LinkedIn. Students and recent college graduates are LinkedIn's fastest growing demographic. So to kind of relay on that. There are over 39 million students and recent graduates on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is currently available in 24 languages and more than 200 countries. More than 2 professionals are joining LinkedIn every second. And then 35% of LinkedIn users access the site daily. So something I wanted to bring up because I know we all are always on Instagram, we're always on Facebook. It does take up a lot of our days. So just to kind of paint this picture. And then one thing I wanted to bring up right here is the 4 bullet points is make connections on LinkedIn, join groups, follow companies, view job postings. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today is because we're an IT staffing and services company is these 4 bullets because in order to get out there, whether it's the business side or whether it's something else you want to get into, criminal justice, like my degree was in criminal justice, or I'm trying to think of other degrees right off the mind, but just get out there and network. Click through. So here's some huge key factors when building your LinkedIn. Photo. Start off with a professional photo. You don't want to do a selfie. We always see people with their animals. Remember, this is something you can put on your resume for a professional to see. Your manager will look at your LinkedIn before they hire you. This is something that they do. That I'm pretty sure you guys all know that managers nowadays look at Facebook, look at Instagram, look at your Twitter before they even hire you or before you even get to their desk. So one huge key factor is just have a professional photo. And it doesn't have to be where you go to the mall and you pay for it. It could just be if you're behind a white wall and your friend takes a picture of it, that's still a professional photo as long as you're not. You can have a tie, you can wear a button up, however you want to be. Have a compelling headline. So consider using a descriptive keywords so the right professionals can discover you. One huge thing around this is, for instance, on the recruiting side, we hit on robust keywords. What I mean by that is, she can give you a little bit of spiel about it, but when we're looking for candidates nationally or locally, we look for certain keywords that make you stand out from everyone else. Of course, yeah, there's going to probably be a lot of people that come up under that keyword, but how are you going to stand out is the main question, is what I like to bring up. Writing a summary, writing your specialties. Utilize customer or job-focused keywords that will help you show up in search results within LinkedIn. My biggest thing with this is you don't want to be that one LinkedIn profile that just has one keyword with no description on it. Because, yeah, we might reach out, but more than likely we won't reach out because, we want you to stand out to against everyone else. Edit your LinkedIn URL. So I do know that LinkedIn automatically generates the end of your URL. make it creative. Make it your first and last name so it's easier for you to network and pass it along to other people when you're giving out your profile because, as I said, that's what managers really look at. Making your profile public is huge. Making sure that you connect with professionals, whether it's internal and professionals or external professionals. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in the near future. Join groups. Huge thing is joining groups. Networking. That's one thing that's going to be big about this presentation is just networking and who you're actually meeting in the market. I believe on the quiz there's a question about networking, and it's going to come up right now in a little bit. But I cannot stress how much networking is important. And spell check. Huge thing is making sure it's so simple. I know we can copy and paste over to Word, but just make sure your grammar is correct. If you think it's wrong, ask a friend. That's my biggest recommendation.
Kind of going back to summary and specialties very quickly, another aspect that helps, the more you add, the more relevant opportunities are going to come your way. If your profile is really vague, the likelihood of someone reaching out to you about something that maybe you're not interested in is much higher. So if you want to be getting more relevant opportunities your way or someone reaching out to you, I highly recommend adding more information about what it is that you're trying to get into.
So here's a quick little LinkedIn profile. Jane Doe. What, if I can ask, what kind of stands out right away that you guys have any feedback about Jane Doe? Profile picture, description. So experience, that's a good one. We all know, and you can put this on your LinkedIn that you're looking for career opportunities. What kind of career opportunities is Jane Doe actually looking for? She wants to get contacted about careers. She wants to get job inquiries. She wants to offer consulting, but she doesn't give a description of what she can consult on or what she can do. So, and then the next profile is Joe. Pretty descriptive. Love this profile. I know what I can tell about Joe is he's a business analyst. What he done previously, he's a financial analyst, and it lists his company, the time frame. He also has recommendations, which is huge. If you can get recommendations, I know I'll talk a little bit more about that right now, but if you can get recommendations from either colleagues or professionals within the market, that's huge because people will look at that, people will read it.
Well, in your guys' case too, getting it from professors. Sometimes we know you don't have a job when you're trying to get into something, so getting professors, people out working a project with you, adding anything you can under recommendations.
Networking. So who should I invite and who should I add first on LinkedIn? Friends and family, 100%. Your friends have families, so add them too, because you're building out your network. You're building out who you can reach out to, because you never know if you guys are on LinkedIn, you guys will see this, but when someone says like, hey, they just started a new job at a company, that company you've been targeting for the last year, you can automatically reach out to that person because you know them. So that's how networking starts. That's how a conversation starts. So classmates, you can add each other. High school and college. Professors love getting added on LinkedIn. They love networking. I don't know if that's true. But I do know majority of the time, like professors love giving recommendations or just networking in a general basis. Employers, huge thing is adding people that are at the current employers that you're targeting, and even out of the company, because you never know what articles that they're putting out there, so you can stay in the loop and you can stay relevant. So one day they make that call and they say, hey, we want to interview you. You actually have a backstory of what you've done and the research that you've done with these companies, because you can actually talk about it. So.
And when you add the companies that you're targeting, in their profile, they post in there if there's job openings. So if you're following them, it's going to post up on your feed so you can stay on top of it if you're checking it daily.
Anyone have any questions? I don't know if I'm going too fast.
How about giving recommendations? Like if they work with each other on projects and does that show up?
Yes.
Or are you gonna cover
Yeah,
that?
I was going to cover that. I'll cover that right now, no worries. Next one, add your warmest contacts, which are classmates, friends, professors. Adding a key factor is adding people that have descriptive biographies about themselves, because you don't want to just be adding like fake profiles, if that makes sense. Because there's a lot of fake profiles out there that just to build up your connections, like you don't want to just add irrelevant people, you want to add relevant people that will actually help your professional network. Remember, LinkedIn is for like your next job opportunity. It's not like adding Instagram or where you just add random people because you saw something funny that day. And then finding alumni.
Just one thing before I move. I receive a lot of invitations for contacts,
Mm-hmm.
and just a little bit of Mexican, and it may be just nitpicking on my part. But I'd like to know who you are before I add you.
Of course.
And so a lot of times I just don't accept invitations because I don't know who those people are. There's nothing wrong about just sending an initial message and say, hey look, I saw your profile, I think we have similar interests, let's connect. That's not. But for me, it makes a difference in terms of the professionalism,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just collecting people with a profile.
I agree, 100%. I agree with you on that.
Can you repeat that for the microphone?
All right.
What you agree with?
Not when you're getting connections, not just adding everybody if they don't know you, and if they add a little synopsis of why they're adding you, which is a good way of adding people. Is that kind of correct? Am I?
Yeah.
There's a function when you send a connection to someone, so you it says like add connection or connect or whatever the terminology is, and there's an option to add a note. So I believe that's what you're alluding to, kind of explaining, hi, I saw your profile, I think that we're interested in similar things, or I see you work at whatever company, let's connect. And it can kind of open up that dialogue. Sometimes people do just kind of blast connections, but there's always that option too to make it a little bit of a warmer relationship. Maybe you don't know them directly, but that can kind of open up the conversation to bridge that gap.
As a recruiter, how many connections do you have that you've not responded to? Just to check.
As a recruiter,
Yeah.
I have a lot, but I think with our job, it's a little different than maybe you trying to network with other people. For me, I'm trying to connect with anybody that I can and any skill set that I would find beneficial for me to network with, because I don't know if they're gonna need a position in the future, or maybe they're working at a company I'm targeting. So I have a lot of connections and a lot of people I don't know, but I still send messages letting them know who I am, and things like that. So from my perspective, it's a little different than, I think, from like what you were saying. You're trying to just network for maybe other professionals to see what they're doing, or anything like that. So I don't think there's any wrong number. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. If you're fine with people adding you and you accept, there's nothing wrong with that, because eventually you'll find out, oh, this person that just added me knows so-and-so that I did a project with at school. And then you can ask them, because it'll show you mutual friends, which actually helps when you're trying to build out a network. So then you can say, hey Carlos, I saw you know Hannah, she works at this company, could you maybe introduce me? I'm trying to target that company, which is very beneficial from that standpoint too.
Because when you add somebody, I think there are two options. One is to leave a note when you send the request, and you can also email. So which one would you prefer to have? Because that's a common thing that people are kind
The
of
email?
Yeah, whether to send an email first and then send a request, or
So
just add a note.
From my understanding, if it says in-mail, isn't it you can't connect right away?
Mm-hmm.
So some people you can't even add as a connection, you just have to send an in-mail, because they don't want people adding them as a connection.
Also, too, InMail sends it to their email right away, and that's what we have, like a tool that sends automatic InMail. And also, too, on the non-InMail side, where you're adding that connection and you're adding that little description. I mean, they both pop up, but one just comes a little bit quicker.
Yeah, because you can't send a message to somebody until you're in connection with them, except for that little note, which only lets you have 100 characters or whatever it is. But if it's an in-mail, you can write as much as you want. But like you said, it goes straight to your email rather than you having to wait till you go on to LinkedIn to see who's adding you and what they're saying.
Good question. Anything else? All right. So one thing is I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to bring in everything that we just talked about, is discovering your brand. One huge thing that we've noticed at Tech Systems is branding. And you'll click into the next one. Personal branding is how we market how we market the unique value we bring to a professional setting. As I'm talking about building out your professional network, building out who you want to be on the internet, branding will help significantly, if I must say. Which brings me to the next slide. If you don't brand yourself, someone else will, and that's 100% honest. We've had it happen plenty of times where we're all human beings. We start thinking stuff about other people, but we don't even know them. And what you put out there and how you perceive yourself online is how you're going to be branded. And before that person even meets you, that's how you're going to be looked at from a professional setting, on a professional setting, and in even personal setting. Your brand is critical for gaining respect, creating new opportunities, and positively influencing the conversation people have when you're not in the room. Knowing your brand provides clarity for professional and personal growth. Personal and professional growth, sorry. So I'm going to dig a little bit more about branding here over the next slides. One huge thing about branding is being authentic, consistent, different, clear, and relevant. So that's all related. It can be related to finding jobs. It can be related to what you want to do as a personal person. Just overall, who you want to be. Does anyone have any questions around that? Nope. All right, cool.
So, yeah, what is a brand?
A brand.
What is your personal brand?
My
So big on that. Yeah.
Yeah, my personal brand and how I want to be how I would like to be looked at is hardworking. Me personally, hardworking. I want to be as authentic as possible, and I don't want me personally for anything to fall under the cracks. Everyone has a different, I guess everyone has a different branding is the best way to look at it.
Branding is what you want to be known
Yeah.
for. Who do you want to be in your everyday life, or is it you're in the workplace with your friends? And I think consistency is key. Your brand is not important just when you're looking for jobs, but also in your job. You know, like Carlos said, he went from an intern to a recruiter to an account manager. That means that, he had that brand of being hardworking, staying on top of his stuff, enough so that our leaders in our office had confidence enough in him to promote him. So whether we like it or not, people are always kind of paying attention to that, whether consciously or subconsciously. So it's important to maintain your brand or be aware of the brand that you are showing to others, not only when you're looking for jobs, not only in your LinkedIn profile, but day to day, both personally and professionally as well.
Quick thing.
Go ahead.
That's just to share with everyone. So, how specific do you need to be to set up your brand? For example, you mentioned hard work. We're all hard work. I'm sorry to say that.
No worries.
And you mentioned at the beginning, you have to stand out. So, and you guys check those profiles all the time. Give a few examples of how people have stood out. Not just I'm a hard worker, and I'm very conscious about my job. What makes a difference? Can you give an example?
I think that's kind of hard to say in terms of, in my opinion, at least in a LinkedIn profile specifically. I think I see this more when I'm speaking to someone or I meet with someone, whether we're meeting for coffee and they come in a t-shirt and sweats when we're talking about a job opportunity, or if they come, prepared. So for me, I don't necessarily gauge that in a LinkedIn profile, but rather when I'm speaking to someone on the phone or meet them or what have you, I kind of personally gauge that more in a face-to-face interaction than maybe what I read on a profile. But I think that's a really good question as well.
But it also depends on what you put on your LinkedIn. So let's say you're a graphic designer and you put your portfolio on your LinkedIn plus your resume, and then you can see all the groups that you're involved in, all the recommendations. So once you start building your profile up from just a profile standpoint and what information you're putting on there, how you're portraying yourself, yeah, like you said, everyone says I'm a hard worker and motivated, but when you show your work and you can show what people are saying about you, that's a good starting point where they're like, oh, okay, so they're already out there, they're involved in these groups, so they're doing X, Y, Z, I can't wait to meet this person, and then it kind of goes into, this is how I'm gonna portray myself for someone to, what I wanna be known for when I do meet somebody. So you kind of start from the LinkedIn profile if that's how you're gonna start meeting people, so.
You just answered it.
Yeah. So I find that a big, especially with people in IT, if they are looking, having because like you said, resumes they're still needed, but when people go online, like that's what people are using is LinkedIn for their resumes, but you can still add it on there, add any projects that you guys have been doing, add whatever you can to show, hey, I worked on this huge project at, Eller and did X, Y, Z, and then have the colleagues or partners write the recommendations on there, you do the same, and see how successful it was, and things like that. So it's just getting as much information from that standpoint front.
I'm just saying, how much do you read
How much do I read?
from the information? Because I can put my whole life there. You're not gonna read all of it.
That's right. I actually read everything, because, I don't know if it's just because we've been networking with so many customers or companies, or maybe it's someone I know. I wanna see how they portray themselves out there. But just being specific, I have to look at that for my job. I have to see, okay, he says he's a Java engineer, but did he use Java in the last 3 jobs? Or is he portraying, which we find that a lot, people are saying, oh, I use this technology, and then you meet them, but their LinkedIn profile looks like they're this crazy Java engineer that can build anything, but they haven't used it in 5 years. So it's just being honest with what you've done. So I personally read everything. I click on people's profile, projects or profiles to see it, because if it looks great, not that I'm technical, but if it looks good to me, then I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Then we meet them and go from there. So hopefully that answered your question.
I think examples of work wherever you can provide them is always great, whether that be putting it on your LinkedIn profile, or I've had candidates interview at a client site for me that were able to bring examples of their work, and that helped them stand out as a candidate. Like, hey, I really love development or instructional design. Can I show you what I've done? And from a client's perspective, they're like, wow, they want to show me their work, and that also can help if you're able to bring any sort of relevant examples or experience.
And you can put websites on there, so if you have a personal website that you put all your work on, you can have a link that directs it to that. If you don't want to put everything on LinkedIn, if you at least say, hey, click my link to view all the work that I've done, whether it's papers, whatever. So you can also do that.
So for example, if they would give a short description of their class projects, that would help them?
Yes.
And then explain all the techniques and software they use.
Absolutely.
And maybe some outcomes.
That's huge, especially for when we're looking for junior level people, because a lot of times your resume is gonna be just projects unless you did an internship or you did something else. We get a lot of people that are like, well, I have no experience, so we have to say, well, talk to me about your projects. Do you do stuff outside of school? That's a huge one for some of our customers. They're like, are they really passionate about technology or whatever it is? Tell me about what you do on your own time, not just in school, which is a huge thing too.
What's the take on having a resume on the LinkedIn profile, or just?
Some managers are still like the old school way, where they can still pull it and have it in hand.
What was the question?
What's the point of having a resume on your LinkedIn if people can still see it all? If you can click it and download it and print it out and have it, sometimes having a physical paper is still
Relevant.
Yeah, still relevant. We still, when we walk people in for their interview, we still bring resumes just in case you wanna write notes. It's still just they're not as relevant, but they're still good to have just in case.
From a recruiting perspective as well, I know typically if someone has again, this isn't the case all the time, but typically if someone has a resume on their LinkedIn, they're a little bit more active in their search. Whereas if someone pulls it off, maybe they're passively open, kind of content. Again, that's not the case 100% of the time, but that could be an indicator as well.
All right, so authenticity. One thing is being just authentic online. Couple slides here, and then we'll just hop right back in. We thrive when operating on our strengths. So kind of what they're just talking about is stand out. At the end of the day, you want to stand out as much as possible. Some huge branding examples is, does everyone know who this is? Pretty sure everyone knows who they are.
Are they on LinkedIn?
I think so.
They might not run it personally.
But yeah, everyone knows their branding. Everyone knows who they are. Just not be like them, but you can definitely stand out. There's always ways and creative ways to stand out there. So one thing, a couple things that I want to finish up here, and we'll touch into core values, which is at the end of it. Figuring out your strengths. Has anyone ever asked their friends, like, hey, what do you see? What do you think are my strengths? Has anyone ever done that? If you think that you have, like, hey, here's my strengths, and I'm going to list them out. Have you ever asked your friend, like, hey, can you verify this? Has anyone ever done that? Out of curiosity, I've done it.
Beneficial.
Yeah,
We do that a lot with tech.
Yes, because we want to make sure like we're being authentic to what we say our strengths are going to be, and she can coach me and say, hey, look, your strength is not that. You really need to improve on this. So ask your friends what you think your strengths are. How do you figure out your strengths? How we figure out internally at Tech is we do Harrison tests. Has anyone ever done like a test to figure out like your core values? Yeah, you have.
Gallup.
Yeah, Gallup is another one. I'm gonna shoot out a link because there's a free one online in case you guys want to figure out what your strengths are. I'll follow up with Gandhi after this so she can actually share that with you guys and you guys can figure out like, hey, here's my key strengths. One thing I talked about earlier, coincidentally on my Harrison test, my first one was hardworking. So it trickles down and really like it made me realize like, hey, as much as I'm saying what I'm doing, my test says it.
And it also shows you your weaknesses. So if you're already doing amazing at your strengths, it's actually beneficial to know what your weaknesses are so you can work on those. You're already good at the other things, so let's figure out what you're not strong in so you can get better at that, which that's a huge thing that we do. I mean, mine's hardworking, building relationships, but I hate confrontation, and that's something that's really hard for me, so that's stuff I have to work on if there's an issue and things like that, and overcoming that anxiety I feel when I have to confront somebody. So, I mean, it goes both ways.
So can you tell us a little bit more about this test? Is this like a survey or does it read your LinkedIn profile and makes conclusions on that?
It doesn't read your LinkedIn profile. That would be cool because it would be
That's
yeah,
the project.
yeah, that would be a great project actually.
It
But
asks you multiple choice questions. So it asks like, how do you feel about confrontation, for example? I don't remember if that's exactly how it's worded. And then I believe there's like a scale, like comfortable, not comfortable. For me, my Harrison was very eye-opening. Some parts I agreed with my strengths, sometimes, or some other parts I was like, I guess I never really thought about that. But it asks you on multiple questions on a scale, and it gives you, I believe, like in your report for ours, they're very, very thorough reports. But it tells you on a scale, I believe, of like 0 to 10, how comfortable are you with confrontation, for example? Is it 0, I'm not comfortable whatsoever, it completely freaks me out? Or is it like a 6, I'm okay with it, but it's not my strong suit? And so you can see where on the spectrum you are in terms of your comfort, like how comfortable you are with certain things, how strong you are with certain things too. So it doesn't just say, hey, here are 20 things you're great at, here are 20 things that you need to improve on. It shows how comfortable or not you are.
So does it implicitly compare you with somebody else? Like if I fill it out, my score, is that in comparison to everybody else? Or is it just raw score?
I do know like internally that it compares us to like, so I'm an account manager, so it'll compare me to all the other account managers. It does.
Something that tech systems.
For this one's specific to tech. So if you were to apply and you wanted to interview at tech, you would take the Harrison test first. And there is a percentage you have to score. You know, I can't remember the bottom number, but you have to score a certain amount to even get an interview because there's certain things you have to have strengths in, and I can't remember what else, but to then get an interview. But it's just, it also helps you realize what direction you would want to go in a job. You know, if you're strong in other areas, then maybe sales isn't right for you because you don't feel comfortable talking to people. I mean, so it's nice to kind of help you kind of direct where you want to go or work on whatever your strengths.
And I don't know if the online ones do compare you to other people across the nation. I can do a little bit of digging and see if the link I'll send over to you does do that, so we can kind of get that out there. And the last question is, what are your core values? And I listed out a lot of core values here. Authenticity, which I've harped on a little bit. Morality, these are kind of just different ones that if you think that your core values are like one of these, and this is just a list of them, right? If you think that, like, hey, one of my biggest core values is I'm looking for happiness in life. I mean, you can take a test, you can figure out what your actual core values are, and ask a friend too. So I just wanted to list these here just to kind of see, like, hey, these are core values that are listed out there, but it's not an all-inclusive list.
I think those core values too can also help determine what you want out of a workplace or a specific job. For example, my eye straight went to having fun. So maybe work-life balance is really important to you. So you can go to work and kill it during the day and then go home and have that fun or have that freedom on the weekends. And so that can kind of help you determine what you may be looking for in a workplace or in a job in general.
Tying this all together, what is a differentiator? What makes you unique? So those core values, those figuring out what your strengths are, doing these online assessments to figure out like, hey, I should take this route in life or I should not take this route in life. Like for my degrees, I was a double major in criminal justice and public management and policy. I networked a lot here in town, and that's how I got to tech systems, but I never thought I'd be in sales. If I would have probably took a test, it would probably said like, hey, sales is the right route to go, because you love talking to people, and I do like talking to people, and I do like networking, so it's just coincidental. Does anyone have any questions? No. So kind of what we touched on earlier, and we kind of been jumping around here. LinkedIn is your new resume. Adding portfolios, adding those projects, which Gandhi was kind of talking about here. The projects is a key factor if you haven't done any internships. Make sure you can speak to your technologies and your expertise that you list. This is huge, because you don't want to go, like let's say we're networking with a person and you go meet this person and you start asking them questions about what's on your LinkedIn and you have no idea what you just put on your LinkedIn. Make sure you can actually talk about it, give a story of how you used specific technologies or any of your experience. You want to make sure you can build dialogue around that. So for instance, the recruiter can help you find a job that highlights your expertise and your technologies that you use, and we can get you out there in the market. One huge thing is don't lie, which relates back to technologies and expertise. What we've done in research, 76% of IT leaders believe that IT resumes have exaggerations and lies. Happens all the time. Don't fall into that category is my best recommendation. Jobs, giving and getting recommendations, kind of what you tied into a little bit earlier. I instead include letters of recommendation. Before you do that, make sure the person that gave you that recommendation is okay with you putting that recommendation online, because sometimes they don't want you to put that, and sometimes they do. So make sure you're asking before you put a letter of recommendation online.
I have a question about that. So as part of the job, I write a lot of letters of recommendation, so not many LinkedIn. I'm a bit worried now because I have 60 students in my class, that there are going to be 60 students who want a recommendation on LinkedIn. Now, they're all good, but really what I know about them is the end grade, because I don't personally know 60 people. So is it even helpful if I can give a generic recommendation, you survived my course, or I can even you did the great, but I don't know how much work exactly they did in their team projects or anything of that. Is it worth it to get these generic recommendations?
I mean, I think it
Yes.
depends.
Yeah, yes and no.
Yes and no. If we are going to call you, so from
Or
our
I'm not gonna, like, if you call me next year.
Yeah,
I get
which that
60,
happens.
100 students every year.
Yeah, and that happens sometimes. I meet someone who's maybe been out of school for 6 months because they traveled after they graduate, now they're back to get into a junior level, and I'm like, okay, I need your professor's information. We're gonna dig into their technical abilities, like what did they do day to day, how did they do on their project, so if you can't answer it, then you can still give a generic if you need it. Sometimes we can use those because we're like, hey, they don't have experience, but if you don't feel like you have enough information to put on LinkedIn, I wouldn't even put it.
Conversely too, you want to ask people for recommendation letters that really know you, know your capabilities, so you get a great letter of recommendation or a great recommendation on LinkedIn, not something generic that helps you stand out too. Just as you said, any professor can write, you survived my class, like you got an A or whatever, but having someone that can write more personal details, in my eyes, always holds more value than a generic one when I'm reading that letter of recommendation. And you want someone that can speak not only to your capabilities in their class, but maybe to your character and work ethic as well.
What about recognizing that you have written recommendation letters for other people? So so that you recognize value in your teammates or other people you work with. Is that something you take into account?
Even getting one from a teammate?
Giving recommendations. I don't know if that shows up on somebody's
So on like,
profile.
if I gave Carlos a recommendation, for example, it would not show up on my profile. I don't believe that I gave him a recommendation, but on his profile, it will say he has to log in and then my recommendation.
Yeah,
I think it
doesn't show
does.
up on yours.
I
That's
don't
what
believe
didn't
it.
I think it does.
It does?
If you go
Okay.
down to recommendations, it says given or received.
Okay.
And you can see where they put it. Sorry. didn't mean
There
to
you
cut
go.
off.
No, you're right. I was wrong.
But you
so.
can't see that, so.
Go ahead. No, you're fine. Building your networks. Touched it a little bit at the beginning. Browse networks for your immediate network. Join groups. Join groups that are valuable to you. Something that will impact your future opportunities.
So what do you do with these groups?
So I personally look. So here's an example. Developers like that are doing like front end development. I'll look within a group first before I even start looking up names. So I'll look at people that are tied to that group and then do another search off of that. So doing like a sub search off of the groups that they're tied to, because some companies like target specific groups and they say like, hey, we want a person with a background that has that's familiar with. Let me see. I'm trying to think of an example.
I have an example. So we run the Project Manager Institute. So if you're in school for business, you want to be a business analyst, then maybe a project manager or anything like that, get your PMP. It's very important to get on LinkedIn and follow the Project Manager Institute of Tucson, and then figure out they have 3 meetups a month, once in Service, so really 2. They have so much information that they've put on there, and you can see the 300 plus other people that are on that group, and it's just for you to get involved. If you want to post something, I'm a part of it, so I can see if someone says, when's the next PMP exam, or where can I get study materials? It's just another spot for you to also start networking. You're going to find other project managers that are at these companies that you're targeting, possibly, and then ask them for advice. And everyone's one thing I found in IT is everyone's friendly, everyone loves to talk about what they do, everyone's there to help. So that's just an example of a group. There's Java groups, there's Python groups, there's so many that you just add to it, and then you can start seeing things, you can post in it, and then you can find out if there's meetup groups, which we're going to be getting into soon, which are very important. So.
And then connecting with everyone, promote your LinkedIn, using it on your email, resume. We all have our LinkedIn tied to our signatures at Tech Systems. So finding your next career opportunity. We've kind of been touching on this whole time, but research the organization. My biggest thing is you want to make sure you understand before going into the interview, because a good interview question that people ask is, what do you even know about this company? And you want to be able to tell a story of like, hey, I saw you guys have been consistently keeping up with, etc. I saw recently you guys have been moving to this. I saw, hey, I want to move to California, and I noticed you're opening up a headquarters in California or even Boston. You always want to just make sure you're keeping in tune on what's going on with the company. Leveraging your LinkedIn connections, which ties into the beginning of this presentation, is adding people that are close to you, that you've networked with in the past, building a target list of companies. So companies that you want to work for. I'm pretty sure you guys are all starting to look at companies that you want to work for in the future. Add those people that are working at those companies. Start by your closest connections, your first, your second connections, and then building on from there. We're fine on.
When you search LinkedIn jobs too, let's say you go to your search and you want to work at Amazon, but there's nothing that's there for you right now, you can save it as a search so it'll pop up and just remind you if something does come available, so you're always aware. So if something's not here today, but in next week a position comes up and you're willing to move, it'll show you, so if you save it, so you're constantly reminded.
There's also a LinkedIn job-specific app that's separate from LinkedIn too, that I know when I was looking for jobs I used, and then I get a notification when I save the search as like a pop-up notification on my phone.
Tying back to this, connecting with internal employees. Start with your closest LinkedIn connections. Professionals love networking. Kind of what Madison was talking about. Everyone loves coffee and lunch. Everyone's got to eat. Everyone's got to drink something throughout the day. So treat them out to coffee. Treat them out to lunch. Pick their brains a little bit. Don't be afraid to go out there and actually meet these type of people, because everyone loves to network. One way or another, you might get them on a good day and you might get them on a bad day. So just network. Key thing to remember, you're 54% more likely to get a job if you're referred. That's huge because there might be jobs that aren't even created online, but if you're referred in and that manager like has someone on the team where like, hey, I reached out to Madison and I think you should bring her on the team, they'll make a position. We've seen it plenty of times where they've made positions for people that are just in the network or they're networking with, that they're friends with, that they bring on automatically. It happens all the time here in town. I can almost imagine it happens nationally as well.
And to give you an idea, more than half the people in our office were all referred.
Every single person but myself.
There you go. So I was referred 4 years ago by a girl I've known. I referred someone else. You were referred by Megan. I mean, everyone's just, no one had to apply online. You just brought them in for an interview and then extended the offer. So
Unless you're the 1%.
unless you're
I'm
her.
the one.
Couple things to keep in mind here. These are for IT jobs. Google, 1.5 years. So what I mean by this, Google, I'll run through it really quick. Google, 1.5 years. Apple, 2 years. Millennials, 3 years. That means that in 1.5 years, that person's already looking for another opportunity or already exiting that opportunity because, of course, there's something new that just came out in the technology field that they find appealing. A lot of people leave big-time companies to do startups. That's one huge thing. A couple things.
So this average, is this the average in the job or in the company?
Job.
Within
So-
IT.
Yeah, but it might be that they moved on or they got a promotion or something else.
It honestly could be because one of us reached out and said, hey, we have an opportunity for you, but it
No, but
pays.
my question is this the average time they stay in the same job position?
Yes.
Or at Google.
Or does this mean they left Google? Or is it both combined?
Or they.
I would say it's both combined.
Both combined?
Yeah.
So if somebody gets a promotion, they move out of their job toward a better job in Google, that would still be counted as,
Yeah, and then that cycle would be restarted, and also outside of the job too, so internally and externally.
So this might reflect some good things too, that people get promoted,
Yep.
not necessarily bad. Yeah.
Correct.
No, it's not a bad thing, especially in IT. Nowadays, you see resumes with 6-month contract, 18-month contract, 3-month contract, instead of someone from Raytheon who's been there for 17 years and then just gets laid off or something, and they're like, I don't even know how to make a resume, And so it's more common to see that within IT, and it's okay as long as it's not. I was at a job full time for 3 months and then I left or got fired. Then I went to another full-time job for 6 months. It's more so contracts from that standpoint.
And last thing here, meetups, kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier. These are just Tucson meetups that we support and we actually go to consistently. This Women in Tech one, we're starting to network with people there so Hannah can be part of that group. But we do play a big part in the Python user group, the project management user group. But honestly, I would recommend going to meetup.com and looking, if you want to target a certain area and your skill set is within that area, go join their group, go network with those people. Because more than likely, those people that work internally at these jobs know a lot more than external people. So network.
They also have ones beyond professional stuff too, if anyone wants to find I saw a yoga one or something like that too, but you can always network through those kinds of groups. Maybe you have a common interest of one thing, and then next thing you know, I start talking to Madison, I realize, oh, Madison was into sales, maybe that's what I'm interested in. So you don't have to just go to professional ones to network with people.
And these are just a few that we sponsor, so we go and we provide food or we sponsor it, and then we network with people as well, because a lot of these are in IT, so they want to know what's going on in the market, so that's why we're there to provide that information. But I mean, I've seen ones where you want to knit together, go on a hike together. I mean, there's so many different things, and if you go on there, you can choose what you want to see, and then they email you all the time. But definitely really important to get involved in one of these, if not more than one.
Questions?
Also, I was going to say, if any of you are interested, since we do network with a lot of people, we're more than happy to sit down with you, whether it's over the phone or we get coffee and help you set up a LinkedIn profile, or we can look at it and maybe give you some information or some advice on what we think you should add or take off or anything like that. But we're more than happy to do that as well.
We look at LinkedIn profiles and resumes
All day
long, so we're happy to
So are you all happy with your LinkedIn profiles? If you have some doubts, now is the time to talk.
So I have a question here. So what I generally do for different job roles is to tailor my resume accordingly, and then that resume might not be essentially similar as the one on my LinkedIn profile. How do you suggest that you deal with these kinds of issues?
I would make it complimentary. Make it as complimentary as possible. I know, yeah, you're right. You do have to adjust it for every job that you're going to be applying for. But if you're completely changing all the technologies that you used, like
No, not that.
Okay, okay.
You know, just if I'm applying for a project manager role, and I'll use those complementary terms, and
So can you give me an example of 2 places you've applied where you've had to change your resume?
So there was this one job I applied for a project manager role. Second job I applied as a technical consultant. So
Okay.
it was totally different.
So I think from a project manager standpoint, there's absolutely nothing wrong with keeping your technologies on there, because a lot of companies really like if people come from a technical background. If you can still get in there and get your hands dirty and manage the project, that's a huge plus, even if they don't need the project manager to do it. But the fact that you have an understanding of it. So maybe there's keywords that you change from managing the project. You've managed this budget size, you've done this, and not being as specific with the technologies, but I would still keep them in there. Because I definitely think that's a huge plus.
So how do you feel about length of resume? So I know that a lot of people push to keep it 1 page, and so a lot of times you do tweak it to make it fit. But if you have a bunch of experience that you want to highlight,
Do not try to make it into 1 page, unless that's all you have. There's nothing, if it's 5 pages, then yes. Then anything below 2002, we delete anyways. We don't even put it on there. And then 2 pages is great. If it's 3 pages, it's 3 pages. Sometimes it's like half that, but honestly, there's a certain layout that's really good for people. We should have brought an example of that, but usually you don't do an objective, you do a summary, list of technical skills, education, and then you do your jobs.
So, what about job experiences versus the projects you're doing academically? For example, I've had around 3 or 4 years of experience before I came, but I've done a bunch of projects while I've been here at Eller as well.
Some people make a specific section for those projects, so maybe you put, literally just projects or academic experience or what have you. I think that's still very relevant to keep on your resume, especially in a situation like yourself. You said you have, 3 or 4 years of work experience, but you've been doing projects as well. I think that it would be a shame for you not to put that on your resume, because that is relevant skills and shows that you're still doing the work.
And how to weigh the 2 against each other? Like the best practice is the 1-page resume, and what if I have to put some part of my projects, I have to shorten some other professional.
Don't worry about the 1 page.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
get that out of your mind, because that is not a problem. If you have some awesome experience or awesome projects, be specific. If you need 5 bullet points for that, or 6 or 7, because it's what you were doing and it's beneficial to the job, then just put it on there.
At the end of the day, you're selling yourself to these companies. You want to, I get it. There's these 1-page kind of mentalities, like, hey, if it's more than 1 page, it's not relevant type of thing. But if you have awesome experience and you can't display that in a resume, because the first thing is, like, how we do it internally is typically we talk to every manager that we come across. And we say, hey, sorry, I don't know your name, but hey, Madison, this candidate is awesome. Let me tell you why he's awesome. And here's his resume. And you can take a look at all the jobs and the projects that he's done. At the end of the day, you're selling yourself. How you want to be represented on a resume or a LinkedIn profile, stand out is the best way to put it.
You want to give yourself credit for all the work you've done too. Like Madison said, if it's 6 pages, then maybe you have some tweaking to do, but I don't think if there's anything wrong with 2 pages, even flowing into a 3rd. Give yourself credit for the hard work you've put in, the experience you have, and like Carlos said, at the end of the day, you are selling yourself, and you don't want them to miss out on any experience. Maybe it's not listed in a job description, but something you did in a previous job catches their eye, and was like, wow, that makes him a little different than the 10 other applicants we have. So you don't want to sell yourself short.
And a big thing that we do when we do meet people, when I start talking to you and I'm like, okay, so tell me about your experience, and they start listing all this stuff, and I'm like, why is this not on your resume? You know, and so they have to go back and remake it anyways, because you're just missing so many great things to put on there.
Essentially the one page, I'm sorry, essentially the one pager is because, you know, there are many ATSs which cut off the resume after one page. I've seen that happen.
Who cuts off?
Yeah,
So
it
they
just
say-
uploads one page and then you can't.
It removes everything off the one
Yeah.
page, so they don't read it actually.
So that's why.
That's why they get curious, like, how should we tailor it?
I've actually never heard that,
I have never heard that
but I don't have an answer for you on that, because
Make sure the first page looks good.
Yeah.
You can just send it to us and we'll say, you know, we'll give you some advice. Make the print smaller, put it all on there.
9.
There was
Good.
a question about.
What are you looking differently on the LinkedIn as opposed to the resume? What is it that you're looking for on LinkedIn, which is not on the resume?
The difference between them, I mean, a lot of times, so in our proprietary database, we house over 87% of people within IT, but then there's a lot of people on LinkedIn that are not in there. So I might not have your resume, I might not have your information, so if your LinkedIn profile looks amazing, I'm gonna send you a message and say, hey, are you looking for opportunities? If not, whatever. But if you're completely blank, I can't see if you have like 3 jobs and there's no description, I mean, I'll still probably reach out, but it's harder to gauge. So, because we don't have a resume, all we have is a LinkedIn profile, where in our database, we might have, you know, John Smith, who we've all worked with for however long, and so we can see his information in there, we have his phone number, his email, so we can just call you. So LinkedIn profile is just another avenue for us or other companies to see, since we don't have your information.
My question is more like, when you're building out a LinkedIn profile, do you just mirror your resume, or are you expecting something more?
I think it's fair to mirror your resume to an extent. I mean, as Carlos kind of mentioned, with it being kind of your digital resume, if you will, I know that's how at least I started, was when I was making my resume and building out my LinkedIn profile, I did kind of mirror it. Sometimes too, you start somewhere, but then you take a look at someone else's profile. You know, maybe I'll look at Carlos's and say, oh, he put some really good stuff on there when he was a recruiter. Maybe I'll add that, or some things might catch your eye, but.
So if you can, so here's like the summary, your specialties. I mean, you can put all this on your resume, then you have your jobs. There's also another section, and I don't see it on here, I think it's below over here, where you can add skills, which is what we find. So if you're not putting anything in the skills, like whether it's Java, project manager, whatever, you're not gonna pop up in some of the stuff. What you're looking for, all the stuff you follow, or those are yours, your education. So you're pretty much mirroring your resume. It's like a different kind of flow.
Platform or tool.
Yeah, there's like a couple extra things.
So I hope they'll stay around for some more questions during lunch maybe. But to end, can we go over the quiz first?
Yeah.